Question 1. When transitioning an existing business continuity management system to ISO 22301-2019 and focusing on the integration of IT disaster recovery planning, what specific action best reflects the updated emphasis on aligning IT recovery with business needs? Option A. Prioritizing the recovery of all IT systems to their pre-incident state within a fixed, standardized recovery time objective for all business units. Option B. Conducting a separate risk assessment solely for IT infrastructure, independent of the overall organizational risk assessment process. Option C. Ensuring the IT disaster recovery strategy and plans are explicitly aligned with the updated business continuity requirements and the outcomes of the business impact analysis. Option D. Developing a comprehensive, standalone IT disaster recovery plan that addresses all potential technology failures, irrespective of business criticality. The correct answer is C. Ensuring the IT disaster recovery strategy and plans are explicitly aligned with the updated business continuity requirements and the outcomes of the business impact analysis. Explanation: the transition from an older version of ISO 22301 to the 2019 version involves understanding the evolution of requirements, particularly concerning the integration of IT disaster recovery planning within the broader business continuity framework. Clause 8.3.2 of ISO 22301-2019, titled Business Continuity Strategies, mandates that an organization shall determine its business continuity strategies. This includes considering the need for continuity and recovery of critical activities, and consequently, the IT infrastructure and services that support them. The 2019 version places a greater emphasis on aligning IT disaster recovery, DR, with business continuity, BC objectives, ensuring that recovery time objectives, RTO, and recovery point objectives, RPO, for IT systems are directly derived from the business impact analysis, BIA, and the organization's overall risk appetite. The concept of IT disaster recovery planning as a distinct, isolated activity is de-emphasized in favor of integrating IT recovery requirements into the overall business continuity strategy and plans. This means that the ITDR plan is not a standalone document, but a component that directly supports the achievement of business continuity objectives, informed by the BIA and risk assessment. Therefore, the most appropriate action during a transition is to ensure that the IT disaster recovery strategy and plans are explicitly aligned with the updated business continuity requirements and the outcomes of the BIA, as mandated by the standard. This alignment ensures that its recovery efforts directly contribute to the restoration of critical business function within acceptable timeframes, as defined by the business itself. Question 2. Consider a critical financial reporting process that, according to a comprehensive business impact analysis, BIA, conducted under ISO 22301-2019 guidelines, has a maximum tolerable period of disruption, MTPD, of 48 hours. If the subsequent business continuity strategy development phase proposes a recovery time objective, RTO, of 50 hours for this same process, what is the primary implication of this discrepancy for the organization's business continuity management system? Option A. The discrepancy highlights a need for enhanced communication between the BIA team and the strategy development team to refine RTO parameters. Option B. The MTPD is too conservative, and a revised BIA should be conducted to increase the acceptable downtime for financial reporting. Option C. The proposed RTO is achievable within the MTPD, ensuring the financial reporting process can be restored promptly and effectively. Option D. The proposed RTO exceeds the MTPD, indicating a failure to adequately define recovery requirements and potentially exposing the organization to unacceptable consequences. The correct answer is D. The proposed RTO exceeds the MTPD, indicating a failure to adequately define recovery requirements and potentially exposing the organization to unacceptable consequences. Explanation: the business impact analysis, BIA, is a fundamental component of ISO 22301-2019, focusing on understanding the potential consequences of disruptive incidents on business activities. Critical aspect of the BIA is the determination of recovery objectives, specifically the recovery time objective, RTO, and the maximum tolerable period of disruption, MTPD. The RTO represents the target time within which a business activity must be restored after a disruption to avoid unacceptable consequences. The MTPD, conversely, is the absolute maximum duration a business activity can remain unavailable before severe, often irreparable, damage occurs, potentially leading to organizational failure or significant regulatory penalties. The relationship between these two is that the RTO must always be less than or equal to the MTPD. If an activity's RTO is set to be longer than its MTPD, it implies that the activity could be disrupted for longer than it can tolerate before critical failure, rendering the recovery plan ineffective and potentially leading to the very unacceptable consequences the BIA aims to prevent. Therefore, aligning the RTO with or below the MTPD is paramount for effective business continuity planning. Question 3. When an organization is transitioning its business continuity management system to the ISO 22301/2019 standard, what aspect of resource management requires the most significant reevaluation to ensure the BCMS remains robust and aligned with the updated requirements for operational resilience, particularly considering potential impacts from evolving environmental regulations and technological dependencies? Option A. The resilience and suitability of physical and technological infrastructure, including dependencies on external utilities and communication networks, alongside an updated assessment of environmental threats and regulatory compliance. Option B. The recruitment and training protocols for business continuity personnel, focusing on enhanced skills for managing complex, interconnected incident response scenarios. Option C. The development of detailed communication plans for internal stakeholders, outlining roles and responsibilities during an activation of the business continuity strategy. Option D. The procurement processes for new business continuity tools and software, ensuring compatibility with existing IT systems and vendor support agreements. The correct answer is A. The resilience and suitability of physical and technological infrastructure, including dependencies on external utilities and communication networks, alongside an updated assessment of environmental threats and regulatory compliance. Explanation. The transition from an older version of ISO 22301 to ISO 22301/2019 requires a thorough review and update of all BCMS resources. This includes not only the identification of necessary human resources with specific competencies and training for business continuity activities, but also the assessment of physical infrastructure and the surrounding environment. Clause 7. 1 of ISO 22301/2019 mandates that an organization shall determine and provide the resources necessary for the establishment, implementation, maintenance, and continual improvement of the BCMS. This encompasses personnel, infrastructure, technology, and any other resources required to support the BCMS and its objectives. Specifically concerning infrastructure and environment, the standard requires consideration of the physical location of facilities, dependencies on external infrastructure, like utilities and communication networks, and potential environmental factors that could impact operations or the BCMS itself, such as natural disasters or regulatory changes affecting environmental compliance. The question probes the most critical resource consideration during this transition phase that directly impacts the BCMS ability to function effectively and meet its objectives, emphasizing a holistic view beyond just personnel. The ability to maintain operations during disruptions is fundamentally tied to the resilience and availability of the physical and technological infrastructure and the understanding of environmental risks that could trigger or exacerbate disruptions. Therefore, the most crucial element to reevaluate for the transition, considering the BCMS core purpose, is the resilience and suitability of the physical and technological infrastructure, alongside an updated assessment of environmental threats and dependencies. Question 4. Assessment of the strategic advantages gained by an organization that has successfully transitioned to ISO 22301/2019 reveals several key outcomes. Which of the following represents the most fundamental and pervasive benefit directly attributable to the implementation and certification of this standard, impacting its operational viability and stakeholder confidence? Option A. A significant reduction in insurance premiums due to a proven lower risk profile, leading to immediate cost savings. Option B. a demonstrable enhancement in organizational resilience and a strengthened capacity to maintain critical operations during and after disruptions, fostering greater stakeholder trust. Option C, an immediate increase in market share as customers prioritize certified organizations over non-certified competitors. Option D, the automatic compliance with all industry-specific regulatory requirements, without the need for further legal consultation. Correct answer is B, a demonstrable enhancement in organizational resilience and a strengthened capacity to maintain critical operations during and after disruptions, fostering greater stakeholder trust. Explanation: the core benefit of adopting ISO 22301-2019, particularly in the context of transitioning from an older standard or establishing a new system, lies in its ability to enhance an organization's resilience and its capacity to respond effectively to disruptive incidents. This resilience is not merely about surviving an event, but about maintaining critical business functions at acceptable predefined levels, thereby minimizing the impact on stakeholders, reputation, and financial stability. The standard's emphasis on a structured approach to identifying potential threats, assessing their impact, and developing appropriate business continuity strategies provides a framework for proactive risk management. This proactive stance, when effectively implemented, leads to a demonstrably improved ability to recover from disruptions, which in turn fosters greater trust among customers, partners, and regulatory bodies. Furthermore, the process of certification often necessitates a thorough review of existing operational procedures and a commitment to continuous improvement, which can uncover inefficiencies and opportunities for optimization beyond immediate continuity concerns. This holistic improvement contributes to overall organizational robustness and a stronger competitive position. Question 5. Following a comprehensive review for transition to ISO 22301-2019, an organization identified that its existing business continuity procedures, developed under a previous standard, did not adequately detail the specific communication channels and escalation paths for critical incident response teams during a prolonged utility outage affecting a primary data center. Which aspect of the transition process is most directly addressed by revising these procedures to include granular communication protocols and escalation matrices? Option A, enhancing the actionability and clarity of response procedures to meet the updated requirements for effective incident management. Option B, expanding the scope of the business impact analysis to incorporate new potential threats. Option C, streamlining the documentation structure to reduce administrative overhead. Option D, integrating financial impact considerations more prominently into recovery strategies. The correct answer is A, enhancing the actionability and clarity of response procedures to meet the updated requirements for effective incident management. Explanation: the transition from an older standard to ISO 22301-2019 requires a thorough review and potential revision of existing business continuity procedures. Clause 8.3. Business continuity plans and procedures mandates that an organization shall establish, implement, maintain, and continually improve documented business continuity plans and procedures to support the organization's business continuity objectives. When transitioning, a key consideration is ensuring that these procedures align with the updated requirements for response, recovery, and resumption. Specifically, the 2019 version places a stronger emphasis on the integration of these procedures into the overall management system, and the need for them to be actionable and validated through exercises. Procedures must clearly define roles, responsibilities, and communication protocols during disruptive events. They should also reflect the outcomes of the risk assessment and business impact analysis, ensuring that the prioritized activities and resources are adequately addressed. The process of transitioning involves not just updating the documentation, but also revalidating its effectiveness against current threats and organizational capabilities, ensuring that the documented procedures remain fit for purpose and compliant with the latest standard. Question 6. Following a comprehensive business continuity exercise that revealed a significant delay in restoring a critical data processing function beyond the established recovery time objective, an internal audit identified that the root cause was insufficient allocation of specialized technical personnel during the incident. What is the most appropriate action to take in accordance with ISO 22301-2019, Clause 10? 1. To address this identified nonconformity and drive continual improvement of the BCMS. Option A. Implement corrective actions to address the root cause of insufficient personnel allocation and subsequently review the effectiveness of these actions. Option B. Immediately update the business continuity plan documentation to reflect a longer recovery time objective for the data processing function. Option C. Initiate a formal process to decommission the data processing function due to its inability to meet recovery time objectives. Option D. Conduct a new risk assessment focusing solely on the technical personnel availability during disruptions. The correct answer is A. Implement corrective actions to address the root cause of insufficient personnel allocation and subsequently review the effectiveness of these actions. Explanation. The ISO 22301-2019 standard, specifically in Clause 10.1, mandates that an organization must continually improve the suitability, adequacy, and effectiveness of its business continuity management system, BCMS. This improvement is driven by the analysis of audit results, performance evaluation, corrective actions, and management review. When a nonconformity is identified, such as a failure in a critical business process during a simulated disruption that was not adequately addressed by the existing continuity plan, the organization must take action. This action involves understanding the root cause of the nonconformity. Following the identification of the root cause, the standard requires the implementation of corrective actions to prevent recurrence. These corrective actions should be appropriate to the impact of the nonconformity and any other interested party requirements. The effectiveness of these corrective actions must then be reviewed. Therefore, the most direct and compliant action following the discovery of a BCMS nonconformity during an exercise, which reveals a gap in the operational resilience of a critical process, is to implement corrective actions to address the identified root cause and prevent its recurrence, followed by a review of their effectiveness. This aligns with the PDCA, Plan Do Check Act, cycle inherent in management system standards. Question 7. Consider an organization transitioning its business continuity management system to ISO 22301-2019. Their existing operational controls are documented and have been tested periodically. However, recent internal audits have highlighted a lack of integration between these controls and the organization's strategic risk appetite. Furthermore, the transition guidance for ISO 22301-2019 emphasizes a more proactive and integrated approach to business continuity. What is the most critical consideration for this organization regarding its operational planning and control during this transition phase to ensure compliance and effectiveness? Option A. Updating all business continuity plans to include new fictional scenarios not previously considered in the risk assessment process. Option B. Implementing a completely new set of operational controls that are entirely independent of the current business continuity management system. Option C. Focusing solely on the recovery time objectives, RTO, and recovery point objectives, RPO, without reassessing the underlying operational processes that support them. Option D. Validating that existing operational controls are sufficient and appropriately adapted to meet the enhanced requirements of ISO 22301-2019 for maintaining critical activities under disruptive conditions. Correct answer is D. Validating that existing operational controls are sufficient and appropriately adapted to meet the enhanced requirements of ISO 22301-2019 for maintaining critical activities under disruptive conditions. Explanation. The transition from an older standard to ISO 22301-2019 requires a thorough review and potential revision of existing operational planning and control mechanisms. Clause 8.1 of ISO 22301-2019, Operational Planning and Control, mandates that an organization shall establish, implement, maintain, and control the processes needed to meet business continuity objectives and to implement business continuity actions. This includes determining requirements for continuity, establishing a business continuity strategy, developing and implementing business continuity plans, and conducting exercises and tests. When transitioning, an organization must ensure that its current operational controls, which are designed to maintain critical activities during disruptions, align with the updated requirements. Specifically, The revised standard emphasizes a more integrated approach to business continuity within the organization's overall risk management framework and strategic planning. The effectiveness of current controls is evaluated against the new standard's expectations for proactive measures, response capabilities, and recovery processes. The transition process necessitates a gap analysis between the existing controls and the requirements of ISO 22301-2019. This analysis informs the necessary updates to procedures, documentation, and training. The focus is on ensuring that operational controls are not merely reactive, but are embedded within day-to-day operations and are capable of supporting the Business Continuity Management System, BCMS, effectively. Therefore, the most critical aspect during this transition concerning operational planning and control is the validation that existing operational controls are sufficient and appropriately adapted to meet the enhanced requirements of ISO 22301-2019 for maintaining critical activities under disruptive conditions. Question 8. Considering the transition to ISO 22301-2019, what is the most critical action an organization must undertake to ensure effective competence and awareness among personnel regarding their BCMS responsibilities, particularly in light of updated communication requirements and potential regulatory impacts like the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR? Option A. Implement a mandatory annual refresher training session for all employees covering the general principles of business continuity and the organization's incident response plan, without specific reference to the ISO 22301-2019 standard. Option B. Conduct a gap analysis of existing training and communication protocols against the specific clauses of ISO 22301-2019, clauses 7, 2, 7, 3, and 7, 4, followed by targeted updates to address identified deficiencies in conveying the implications of nonconformance and stakeholder-specific communication needs. Option C. Rely solely on the organization's existing human resources department to disseminate information about BCMS updates through company-wide emails, assuming all personnel will understand their roles and the importance of compliance. Option D. Develop a new, comprehensive business continuity policy document that outlines all responsibilities, without providing specific training or communication channels to ensure understanding and awareness of its contents. Correct answer is B. Conduct a gap analysis of existing training and communication protocols against the specific clauses of ISO 22301-2019, clauses 7, 2, 7, 3, and 7, 4, followed by targeted updates to address identified deficiencies in conveying the implications of nonconformance and stakeholder-specific communication needs. Explanation. The transition from ISO 22301-2012 to ISO 22301-2019 necessitates a review and potential update of how an organization ensures its personnel are competent and aware of their roles and responsibilities within the Business Continuity Management System, BCMS. Clause 7, 2 of ISO 22301-2019. Competence requires the organization to determine the necessary competence for personnel affecting BCMS performance, ensure these individuals are competent based on education, training, or experience, and take actions to acquire the necessary competence. Furthermore, Clause 7.3 Awareness mandates that persons under the organization's control are aware of the business continuity policy, their contribution to the effectiveness of the BCMS, and the implications of not conforming to BCMS requirements. Clause 7.4 Communication addresses internal and external communication relevant to the BCMS, including what, when, with whom, how, and who communicates. When transitioning, an organization must evaluate its existing training programs and awareness initiatives against the updated requirements. This involves identifying any gaps in current practices that might not fully address the nuances of the 2019 standard. For instance, the 2019 version places a stronger emphasis on the asterisk implications asterisk of nonconformance for personnel, requiring more than just general awareness of BCMS objectives. It also refines the communication requirements by specifying the need for documented communication processes and consideration of communication needs for various stakeholders, including those with direct impact on the BCMS. Therefore, a comprehensive review of training materials, communication plans, and competency assessment methods is crucial. The organization needs to ensure that its communication strategy effectively conveys the updated BCMS requirements and the importance of individual contributions to all relevant parties, both internal and external. This includes ensuring that personnel understand not just what to do, but also why it is important and the consequences of failure, particularly in light of evolving threat landscapes and regulatory expectations, such as data protection regulations like GDPR or industry-specific compliance mandates. The transition process itself is an opportunity to reinforce these competencies and awareness levels, ensuring that the updated BCMS is robust and effectively embedded within the organization's culture. Question 9. When transitioning to ISO 22301-2019, an organization is reassessing its business continuity risk landscape. The standard mandates a thorough evaluation of potential disruptive events. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the principles outlined in ISO 22301-2019 for prioritizing these identified risks to ensure the BCMS effectively addresses the most critical threats? Option A. Prioritizing risks based on the subjective opinions of senior management, without a structured methodology for evaluating likelihood or impact. Option B. Systematically assessing the likelihood of occurrence for each identified risk and evaluating its potential impact across financial, operational, reputational, and legal/regulatory dimensions to determine a composite risk score for prioritization. Option C. Focusing exclusively on the financial impact of potential disruptions, neglecting other critical aspects such as operational continuity and stakeholder reputation. Option D. Relying solely on historical incident data to predict future risk frequencies and impacts, without considering emerging threats or changes in the organizational context. The correct answer is B. Systematically assessing the likelihood of occurrence for each identified risk and evaluating its potential impact across financial, operational, reputational, and legal/regulatory dimensions to determine a composite risk score for prioritization. Explanation. The transition from ISO 22301-2012 to ISO 22301-2019 involves several key changes, particularly in how risks are evaluated and prioritized. The 2019 version emphasizes a more integrated approach to risk management within the overall Business Continuity Management System, BCMS. Clause 8.2. Risk assessment, and Clause 8.3. Business continuity opportunities are crucial here. The standard requires an organization to determine and evaluate risks to its objectives and its ability to achieve its intended outcomes. This evaluation process necessitates considering the likelihood of a risk event occurring and the potential impact it could have on the organization. The impact assessment should encompass various aspects, including financial, operational, reputational, and legal/regulatory consequences. Prioritization is then based on this evaluation, allowing the organization to focus resources on the most significant threats. The standard encourages a structured approach to risk assessment, often involving qualitative and quantitative methods. However, the core principle is to understand the potential disruption and its severity to inform the selection and implementation of appropriate business continuity strategies. The 2019 revision also places greater emphasis on understanding the context of the organization, Clause 4.1, and the needs and expectations of interested parties, Clause 4.2, which directly influence the risk evaluation criteria. Therefore, the most effective approach to risk evaluation and prioritization, in the context of transitioning to ISO 22301-2019, involves a systematic assessment of both the likelihood of disruptive incidents and their potential impact across multiple organizational dimensions, informed by the established organizational context and stakeholder requirements. Question 10. When transitioning an existing business continuity framework to align with ISO 22301-2019, an organization discovers that its current data backup procedures for the Customer Relationship Management (CRM) system are performed daily at midnight. Business impact analysis indicates that a disruption occurring at 10:00 a.m. could lead to a loss of critical customer service operations for up to 12 hours before manual workarounds become infeasible. Furthermore, Regulatory compliance mandates that no more than 24 hours of customer interaction data can be lost without incurring significant fines. Considering these factors, what is the most appropriate recovery point objective (RPO) for the CRM system's customer interaction data under the ISO 22301-2019 framework? Option A, 12 hours. Option B, 24 hours. Option C, 1 hour. Option D, 0 hours. The correct answer is B, 24 hours. Explanation: determining the recovery point objective (RPO) involves a thorough assessment of the impact of data loss on an organization's operations and its ability to meet its obligations. The RPO quantifies the maximum acceptable period of data loss that can occur following a disruptive incident. This is not a purely technical decision, but a business one, informed by the criticality of different data sets and the potential financial, reputational, and legal consequences of losing that data. For instance, if a customer database is critical and its loss for more than an hour would result in significant financial penalties due to a breach of data privacy regulations like GDPR or CCPA, then the RPO for that data would need to be very low, perhaps minutes or even near zero. Conversely, for less critical data, such as internal non-essential project documentation, a longer RPO might be acceptable. The process involves engaging with business unit stakeholders to understand their operational dependencies on data, identifying regulatory requirements related to data retention and recovery, and evaluating the cost-effectiveness of various data protection and recovery solutions. The final RPO for a given system or data set is a balance between the acceptable level of data loss and the resources required to achieve that level. It is a crucial input for selecting appropriate backup frequencies and recovery strategies. Question 11. Consider a mid-sized financial services firm that has completed its business impact analysis and risk assessment as per ISO 22301-2019. The analysis revealed that its core online trading platform has a maximum tolerable period of disruption, MTPD, of 4 hours and a recovery time objective, RTO, of 2 hours. The firm's risk assessment identified a high probability of a localized power outage impacting its primary data center. Which of the following approaches to developing continuity strategies for this critical function would be most aligned with the principles of ISO 22301-2019, focusing on achieving the defined recovery objectives? Option A. Contracting with a third-party service provider to offer a mirrored infrastructure that can be activated on demand, with a guaranteed recovery time of 8 hours. Option B. Implementing a hot standby data center in a geographically diverse location with real-time data replication, ensuring immediate failover within the RTO. Option C. Establishing a comprehensive data backup solution that is performed daily and stored offsite, with a plan to restore operations to a secondary, less capable facility within 24 hours. Option D. Developing a manual processing procedure for critical transactions that can be activated if the online platform is unavailable for more than 1 hour, relying on paper records and external communication channels. Correct answer is B. Implementing a hot standby data center in a geographically diverse location with real-time data replication, ensuring immediate failover within the RTO. Explanation: the development of a business continuity plan, BCP, under ISO 22301-2019 necessitates a thorough understanding of the organization's critical business functions and their dependencies. The standard emphasizes a risk-based approach, meaning that the BCP should be tailored to address the specific threats and vulnerabilities identified during the business impact analysis, BIA, and risk assessment processes. A key aspect of BCP development is defining clear objectives for recovery, such as the maximum tolerable period of disruption, MTPD, and the recovery time objective, RTO, for each critical activity. These objectives are crucial for guiding the selection and design of appropriate continuity strategies. Strategies are the methods and procedures employed to maintain or restore critical business functions within their defined objectives. They can encompass a range of options, from data backup and recovery to alternative work locations, supply chain diversification, or mutual aid agreements. The selection of strategies must consider their feasibility, cost-effectiveness, and alignment with the organization's overall risk appetite and strategic goals. Furthermore, the BCP must detail the specific actions resources, and responsibilities required to implement these strategies during a disruptive event. This includes documenting communication protocols, escalation procedures, and the roles of the incident management and business continuity teams. The standard also mandates that the BCP be documented, maintained, and tested to ensure its effectiveness and relevance. The process of strategy selection is iterative and informed by the BIA risk assessment and the organization's capacity to implement and sustain different continuity measures. Therefore, the most effective strategy is one that demonstrably meets the defined recovery objectives while being practical and sustainable for the organization. Question 12. An organization, having previously certified to ISO 22301-2012, is now undertaking the transition to ISO 22301-2019. Their existing business continuity objectives include reduce the impact of IT system failures by 50% within 2 years. When reviewing these objectives as part of the transition process, which of the following actions most accurately reflects the requirements of ISO 22301-2019 Clause 8? 3. Concerning the establishment and planning for objectives. Option A. Archive the previous objective and create a new set of objectives based entirely on the examples provided in the ISO 22301-2019 Annex A Guidance documents. Option B. Discontinue the practice of setting specific percentage-based objectives for impact reduction and instead focus on qualitative statements about maintaining operational continuity. Option C. Replace the existing objective with a new one that focuses solely on achieving full system recovery within 24 hours, as this is a more direct measure of business continuity. Option D. Reevaluate the measurability and achievability of the objective in the current organizational context and risk landscape, ensuring it remains relevant and contributes to overall resilience, potentially revising the target or timeframe if necessary. The correct answer is D. Reevaluate the measurability and achievability of the objective in the current organizational context and risk landscape, ensuring it remains relevant and contributes to overall resilience, potentially revising the target or timeframe if necessary. Explanation: the transition from ISO 22301-2012 to ISO 22301-2019 mandates a review and potential revision of existing business continuity objectives. Clause 8. 3 of ISO 22301-2019, Objectives and Planning to Achieve Them, requires that the organization establish business continuity objectives at relevant functions, levels, and processes. These objectives must be measurable where practicable, aligned with the organization's policy, and take into account requirements and opportunities. Crucially, the standard emphasizes that the planning process should consider what needs to be done, what resources are required, who is responsible when it will be completed, and how the results will be evaluated. When transitioning, an organization must ensure that its current objectives still align with the updated requirements and the organization's current risk appetite and strategic direction. This involves assessing whether existing objectives are still relevant, measurable, and achievable in the context of the revised standard, and any changes in the threat landscape or organizational capabilities. The focus is on ensuring that the objectives drive effective business continuity planning and are demonstrably contributing to the resilience of the organization. The process of updating objectives is not merely a documentation exercise, but a strategic reevaluation of the organization's commitment to continuity and resilience, ensuring that they are smart, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound, where appropriate, and directly support the overarching business continuity policy and strategy. Question 13. When transitioning an existing business continuity management system, BCMS, to ISO 22301-2019, what fundamental aspect must be reevaluated and potentially redefined to ensure the BCMS accurately reflects the organization's current operational realities and strategic intent, as per the standard's requirements for establishing applicability? Option A. The frequency of business continuity training for all employees, adjusting it based on recent audit findings. Option B. The specific incident response team composition and their contact information, ensuring it aligns with current personnel. Option C. The documented boundaries and applicability of the BCMS, considering current organizational context, products, services, and interested parties' requirements. Option D. The detailed business impact analysis, BIA, methodologies used, verifying their continued relevance to all critical business functions. The correct answer is C. The documented boundaries and applicability of the BCMS, considering current organizational context, products, services, and interested parties' requirements. Explanation. The core of defining the scope of a business continuity management system, BCMS, under ISO 22301-2019 involves identifying the boundaries of the organization's activities, products, and services that the BCMS will cover. This process is intrinsically linked to the organization's context, its interested parties, and its business continuity objectives. The standard emphasizes that the scope should be documented and should consider the products and services provided by the organization and the complexity of its operations. When transitioning to the 2019 version, organizations must ensure their scope reflects any changes in their operational environment, strategic direction, or regulatory landscape since the previous version. Specifically, Clause 4.3 of ISO 22301-2019 mandates that the organization shall determine the boundaries and applicability of the BCMS to establish its scope. This involves understanding the organization's structure, its geographic locations, the activities it performs, and the products and services it offers, all within the context of its internal and external issues. The scope must also consider the requirements of interested parties relevant to business continuity. Therefore, a comprehensive review of all these elements is crucial to correctly establish and document the BCMS scope during a transition. Question 14. Considering the transition to ISO 22301-2019, which of the following actions by an organization's top management best exemplifies their commitment to integrating the BCMS into the overall business strategy and operations, as stipulated in Clause 5? Option A. Outsourcing the entire business impact analysis and risk assessment process to an external consultancy without internal oversight. Option B. Appointing a single business continuity manager responsible for all aspects of BCMS documentation and incident response coordination. Option C. Establishing a dedicated business continuity steering committee comprised of senior functional leaders to oversee BCMS policy development and resource allocation. Option D. Conducting annual business continuity awareness training sessions for all employees, focusing on basic preparedness. The correct answer is C. Establishing a dedicated business continuity steering committee comprised of senior functional leaders to oversee BCMS policy development and resource allocation. Explanation. The transition to ISO 22301-2019 from a previous version, or the initial implementation of the standard, places significant emphasis on leadership's role in establishing and maintaining a business continuity management system, BCMS. Clause 5. Leadership specifically mandates that top management demonstrate leadership and commitment with respect to the BCMS. This includes ensuring the BCMS policy and objectives are established and are compatible with the strategic direction of the organization. Crucially, it requires top management to integrate the BCMS requirements into the organization's business processes. Furthermore, top management must ensure the availability of the resources needed for the BCMS and communicate the importance of effective business continuity and the requirements of the BCMS. They are also responsible for ensuring that the BCMS achieves its intended outcomes and for engaging, directing, and supporting persons to contribute to the effectiveness of the BCMS. This proactive involvement and integration are fundamental to the successful establishment and ongoing operation of a robust BCMS, ensuring it is not merely a standalone document, but a core component of organizational resilience. The commitment must be evident through actions that foster a culture of business continuity throughout the organization. Question 15. Considering the transition to ISO 22301-2019, a global logistics firm, Swift Parcel Deliveries, is reassessing its recovery strategies for its critical order processing system, which has a defined maximum tolerable period of disruption, MTPD, of 4 hours, and a recovery time objective, RTO, of 2 hours. They are evaluating a new strategy that involves replicating data to a cloud-based disaster recovery site with automated failover capabilities. This strategy also includes a reciprocal agreement with a competitor for shared physical infrastructure in a geographically distinct location, to be activated only if the primary cloud recovery fails. Which of the following best describes the primary recovery strategy being implemented for the order processing system in this scenario? Option A. A cold site recovery strategy with manual data restoration and reliance on external third-party service providers. Option B. Hybrid recovery strategy leveraging cloud-based automated failover for rapid restoration and a reciprocal agreement for secondary infrastructure redundancy. Option C. A multi-site active-active recovery strategy utilizing synchronized data centers for continuous availability. Option D. A warm site recovery strategy focused on data backup and restoration within a predefined service level agreement. The correct answer is B. A hybrid recovery strategy leveraging cloud-based automated failover for rapid restoration and a reciprocal agreement for secondary infrastructure redundancy. Explanation. The transition to ISO 22301-2019 requires a thorough review and update of existing business continuity plans and strategies. When developing recovery strategies for critical functions, organizations must consider the maximum tolerable period of disruption, MTPD, and the recovery time objective, RTO, for each function. The MTPD represents the absolute longest time a function can be unavailable without causing unacceptable consequences, while the RTO is the target time within which a function must be restored after a disruption. The chosen recovery strategy must align with these defined timeframes. Furthermore, the strategy should also consider resource availability, cost-effectiveness, and the feasibility of implementation during a crisis. For instance, a critical financial reporting function with a very low RTO might necessitate a hot site recovery solution, while a less time-sensitive administrative function could be adequately served by a cold site or a work-from-home arrangement. The selection process involves evaluating multiple options against these criteria to ensure the most appropriate and effective approach is adopted, thereby minimizing the impact of disruptions. The integration of new or updated regulatory requirements, such as data residency laws or specific incident reporting mandates, also plays a crucial role in shaping the recovery strategy, ensuring compliance alongside operational resilience. Question 16. When transitioning a business continuity management system to ISO 22301-2019, what is the most critical consideration for ensuring the continued effectiveness and compliance of the organization's documented information? Option A. The immediate replacement of all existing documented information with templates provided by a new BCMS consultant engaged for the transition project. Option B. A superficial check of document titles and version numbers to confirm they reflect the 2019 standard without substantive content review. Option C. A comprehensive review and update of all BCMS-related documented information to align with the 2019 version of the standard and current organizational context, including any changes in legal or regulatory obligations. Option D. The creation of new documented information solely based on the perceived gaps identified during the initial transition assessment, ignoring existing relevant documentation. The correct answer is C. A comprehensive review and update of all BCMS-related documented information to align with the 2019 version of the standard and current organizational context, including any changes in legal or regulatory obligations. Explanation. The transition to ISO 22301-2019 necessitates a review and update of all documented information within the Business Continuity Management System, BCMS. Clause 7.5 of the standard, titled Documented Information, outlines the requirements for creating, updating, and controlling documented information. Specifically, it states that the organization shall determine the extent of documented information needed for the effectiveness of the BCMS. This includes documented information required by the standard and documented information determined by the organization as necessary for the BCMS. When updating documented information, the organization must ensure it is identified, formatted, reviewed, and approved. The context of the update is crucial. For instance, changes in the organization's scope, risk assessment findings, business impact analysis outcomes, or new legal and regulatory requirements, such as data privacy laws like GDPR or industry-specific regulations, would all mandate an update. The key is that the documented information remains current, relevant, and accurate to support the BCMS ongoing operation and improvement. Therefore, the most comprehensive approach to updating documented information during a transition involves a systematic review of all BCMS-related documents against the new standards requirements and the organization's current operational context, ensuring all necessary revisions are made and approved. This process guarantees that the BCMS remains effective and compliant with ISO 22301-2019. Question 17. A global fintech company, Quantum Leap Solutions, is undertaking its transition to ISO 22301-2019. The company operates across multiple jurisdictions, each with distinct financial regulations and data protection laws, such as the European Union's GDPR and Singapore's Personal Data Protection Act. Quantum Leap Solutions' primary service involves real-time transaction processing, which is critical for its extensive customer base and partner network. During the review of Clause 4.2, understanding the needs and expectations of interested parties, the BCMS team is debating the most comprehensive method for identifying and documenting relevant requirements from all stakeholders. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the intent of ISO 22301-2019 for a complex, regulated entity like Quantum Leap Solutions, ensuring that all critical continuity dependencies and compliance obligations are captured? Option A. Relying solely on the organization's existing internal risk management framework and historical incident reports to infer the needs of external parties. Option B. A systematic engagement process involving direct consultations with regulatory bodies, customer focus groups, key supplier audits, and analysis of legal and contractual obligations to establish a comprehensive register of relevant requirements. Option C. Prioritizing only those interested parties explicitly mentioned in the previous version of the BCMS standard, assuming their requirements remain static. Option D. Conducting a broad market survey to gauge general customer satisfaction, without specific focus on continuity needs or regulatory compliance. The correct answer is B. A systematic engagement process involving direct consultations with regulatory bodies, customer focus groups, key supplier audits, and analysis of legal and contractual obligations to establish a comprehensive register of relevant requirements. Explanation: the transition from ISO 22301-2012 to ISO 22301-2019 necessitates a thorough reevaluation of how interested parties and their requirements are identified and managed. Clause 4.2 of ISO 22301-2019, understanding the needs and expectations of interested parties, mandates that the organization shall determine A. the interested parties relevant to the BCMS, and B. the relevant requirements of these interested parties. This determination is crucial for establishing the scope and objectives of the BCMS. When considering a scenario involving a multinational financial services firm operating in a highly regulated environment, the identification of interested parties must extend beyond internal stakeholders to encompass external entities with significant influence or reliance on the organization's continuity. Regulatory bodies, such as central banks and financial conduct authorities, impose specific compliance obligations that directly impact business continuity planning, including reporting requirements and minimum resilience standards. Shareholders and investors are interested in the financial stability and reputation of the organization, which are directly threatened by disruptive events. Customers expect uninterrupted service delivery, and their loss can have severe reputational and financial consequences. Suppliers and partners are also critical, as their inability to perform their functions can cascade into the organization's own operational failures. Therefore, a comprehensive approach to determining interested parties and their requirements involves not just listing them, but also understanding the nature and criticality of their requirements in the context of business continuity. This process should be dynamic, acknowledging that the regulatory landscape and stakeholder expectations can evolve. For instance, recent data privacy regulations, like the GDPR, introduce new requirements related to data protection during a disruption, impacting how data is handled and recovered, thus becoming a relevant requirement for interested parties like data protection authorities and customers. The organization must then consider these requirements when defining its BCMS scope, objectives, and the design of its business continuity strategies and plans. Question 18. When an established organization, currently operating under an older business continuity framework, undertakes a transition to the ISO 22301-2019 standard, what is the most crucial initial step in re-establishing its organizational context to ensure alignment with the new standard's requirements and its own strategic evolution? Option A. Form a detailed risk assessment of all critical business functions, prioritizing those with the highest financial implications in the event of a disruption. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive review of all existing business continuity plans and procedures to identify any gaps relative to the ISO 22301-2019 clauses. Option C. Engage all key stakeholders, including top management and departmental heads, to solicit their input on potential disruptive scenarios and their perceived impact. Option D. Systematically analyze both internal and external factors that influence the organization's ability to achieve its business continuity objectives, ensuring these are directly linked to strategic direction and BCMS scope. The correct answer is D. Systematically analyze both internal and external factors that influence the organization's ability to achieve its business continuity objectives, ensuring these are directly linked to strategic direction and BCMS scope. Explanation. The organizational context of an entity, as defined in ISO 22301-2019, involves understanding the internal and external issues relevant to its purpose and its strategic direction, and which affect its ability to achieve the intended outcomes of its business continuity management system, BCMS. This understanding is foundational for establishing the scope of the BCMS and for identifying interested parties and their requirements. When transitioning to ISO 22301-2019, a critical aspect is ensuring that the BCMS remains aligned with the evolving business strategy and operational realities. External issues can include regulatory changes, market shifts, technological advancements, and the actions of competitors. Internal issues encompass the organization's culture, structure, capabilities, and resources. The identification and analysis of these issues are not static. They require ongoing review. For instance, a new data privacy regulation like the GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, would be a significant external issue that could impact the organization's approach to data handling during disruptions, potentially requiring changes to recovery strategies and communication plans. Similarly, a change in the company's strategic focus towards digital services would necessitate a reevaluation of critical business functions and their dependencies in the context of cyber threats, a key internal issue driven by strategic direction. Therefore, the most comprehensive approach to understanding organizational context during a transition involves a systematic evaluation of both the internal and external environments, directly linking these findings to the strategic objectives and the overall scope of the BCMS. This ensures that the BCMS is robust, relevant, and capable of addressing the unique challenges and opportunities presented by the organization's operating landscape. Question 19. During the transition to ISO 22301-2019, an organization is reassessing its critical business functions. A key consideration is how to determine which functions are most vital to maintain or resume following a disruptive incident. Considering the updated requirements and the overall objective of business continuity, what is the most fundamental criterion for designating a business function as critical? Option A. The availability of necessary resources and existing mitigation controls for that specific function. Option B. The degree of interdependency between the function and other supporting business processes. Option C. The potential impact of disruption on the organization's ability to meet its objectives and fulfill its commitments. Option D. The perceived importance of the function by senior management and key stakeholders. Correct answer is C. The potential impact of disruption on the organization's ability to meet its objectives and fulfill its commitments. Explanation. The transition from ISO 22301-2012 to ISO 22301-2019 involves a refinement of how organizations identify and prioritize critical business functions. The 2019 version emphasizes a more integrated approach, linking business continuity directly to the organization's strategic objectives and risk appetite. When identifying critical business functions, the primary consideration is the impact of disruption on the organization's ability to meet its objectives, including legal and regulatory obligations, stakeholder expectations, and its overall mission. This involves assessing the consequences of an inability to perform a function within acceptable timeframes. While resource availability and existing controls are important for determining recovery strategies, they are secondary to understanding the fundamental impact of the function's absence. The interdependencies between functions are also crucial, as the failure of one function can cascade and impact others, but the initial identification of criticality stems from the direct impact of the function itself. Therefore, the most critical factor in identifying a critical business function during a transition to ISO 22301-2019 is the potential impact of its disruption on the organization's ability to achieve its objectives and fulfill its commitments. Question 20. When transitioning an existing business continuity management system to comply with ISO 22301-2019, what is the most critical aspect of controlling documented information to ensure continued effectiveness and compliance with the updated standard? Option A. Verifying that all documented information accurately reflects the current operational capabilities and the specific requirements of ISO 22301-2019 with robust version control and access permissions. Option B. Ensuring that all historical BCMS documents are archived in a secure, off-site location for potential future reference or audit purposes. Option C. Implementing a digital archiving system for all BCMS-related documents, regardless of their current relevance or the standard's requirements for retention. Option D. Prioritizing the creation of new documented information to meet any perceived gaps in the previous version, without a comprehensive review of existing documentation. The correct answer is A. Verifying that all documented information accurately reflects the current operational capabilities and the specific requirements of ISO 22301-2019 with robust version control and access permissions. Explanation: the transition from an older standard to ISO 22301-2019 requires a thorough review and potential revision of all documented information that supports the Business Continuity Management System, BCMS. Clause 7.5 of ISO 22301-2019, Documented Information, outlines the requirements for establishing, implementing, maintaining, and continually improving the BCMS. This includes the need to determine the documented information necessary for the effectiveness of the BCMS, which encompasses both information required by the standard and information determined by the organization as necessary. The transition process specifically mandates that organizations must ensure that their documented information remains current, accurate, and appropriate for the new requirements. This involves evaluating existing procedures, policies, plans, records, and other forms of documented information to identify any gaps or areas needing modification to align with the 2019 version. The control of documented information encompasses aspects such as identification, format, media, review and approval, change control, retention, and disposition. During a transition, the primary focus for controlling documented information is to ensure its integrity, accessibility, and suitability for the updated BCMS. This means that while the core principles of control remain, the application must be adapted to the specific changes introduced in the 2019 version of the standard, ensuring that all BCMS documentation reflects the current state of the organization's capabilities and the standard stipulations. Question 21. Consider a scenario where a mid-sized e-commerce firm, transitioning its business continuity management system to ISO 22301-2019, experiences a severe cyber attack that renders its primary customer-facing website inaccessible for an extended period. This incident also raises concerns about potential unauthorized access to customer data. According to the principles outlined in ISO 22301-2019, particularly concerning communication during disruptive events, what is the paramount consideration for the organization's incident management team to address immediately? Option A. conducting a post-incident forensic analysis to determine the exact nature and origin of the cyber attack to prevent future occurrences. Option B. Establishing and maintaining timely and accurate communication channels with all identified stakeholders, including customers, regulatory bodies, and internal personnel. Option C. Initiating a comprehensive review of the business continuity policy to identify any gaps or deficiencies that may have contributed to the incident's impact. Option D. Activating the organization's disaster recovery plan to restore IT infrastructure and data to operational status as quickly as possible. The correct answer is B. Establishing and maintaining clear, timely, and accurate communication channels with all identified stakeholders, including customers, regulatory bodies, and internal personnel. Explanation. The transition to ISO 22301-2019 necessitates a thorough review and potential revision of existing incident management procedures. Clause 8.4.3 of the standard, communication, specifically addresses the requirements for establishing and maintaining communication channels during disruptive incidents. When a significant cyber attack impacts a company's primary customer portal, leading to a loss of access and potential data breaches, the incident management process must ensure that all relevant stakeholders are informed promptly and accurately. This includes internal teams, affected customers, regulatory bodies. If data breach notification laws apply, such as GDPR or CCPA, depending on jurisdiction and potentially the public, the core principle is to provide timely, clear, and consistent information to manage expectations, mitigate panic, and maintain trust. This involves defining who communicates what, to whom, and through which channels. The focus is on maintaining situational awareness and coordinating response efforts effectively. The transition to the 2019 version emphasizes the integration of incident management with the overall business continuity strategy, ensuring that communication plans are not isolated, but are an integral part of the response and recovery activities. Therefore, the most critical aspect of managing this incident from a communication perspective is ensuring that all necessary parties receive timely and appropriate updates. Question 22. A global e-commerce platform operating under strict data privacy regulations such as GDPR and CCPA is transitioning its business continuity management system to ISO 22301-2019. Their primary concern is minimizing data loss for customer transaction records and ensuring that these records can be restored with minimal delay to meet customer service level agreements. They have identified that a complete system failure could result in significant financial and reputational damage. Considering the need to balance recovery speed with storage costs and the regulatory imperative for data availability, which data backup and recovery strategy best aligns with their objectives and the principles of ISO 22301-2019. Option A. Performing weekly differential backups to tape media stored in a secure offsite facility, with recovery procedures that are only initiated after a formal request is approved by senior management. Option B. Adopting a daily full backup strategy to an on-premises storage array, with incremental backups performed weekly and a documented manual recovery procedure that is tested annually. Option C. Utilizing a monthly snapshot backup of all databases to cloud storage, with a recovery plan that relies on purchasing new hardware and reinstalling software if a major incident occurs. Option D. Implementing a strategy of near-continuous data replication to a secondary data center with automated failover capabilities, coupled with a robust, regularly tested restoration process from these replicated datasets, ensuring an RPO of minutes and an RTO of under 1 hour for critical transaction systems. Correct answer is D. Implementing a strategy of near-continuous data replication to a secondary data center with automated failover capabilities, coupled with a robust, regularly tested restoration process from these replicated datasets, ensuring an RPO of minutes and an RTO of under 1 hour for critical transaction systems. Explanation. The transition to ISO 22301-2019 from earlier versions, or when establishing a new BCMS, requires a robust approach to data backup and recovery. This involves defining recovery point objectives, RPO, and recovery time objectives, RTO, for critical data and systems. The RPO dictates the maximum acceptable amount of data loss measured in time, while the RTO specifies the maximum acceptable downtime for restoring a business function or system. For a financial services firm operating under stringent regulatory requirements like those from the Financial Conduct Authority, FCA, or similar bodies globally, data integrity and minimal data loss are paramount. Strategy that balances the cost of backup solutions with the business's tolerance for data loss and downtime is essential. Continuous data protection, CDP, or near-continuous backups, coupled with off-site storage and regular automated testing of recovery procedures, are critical components. The choice between full backups, incremental backups, or differential backups depends on the RPO, the volume of data, network bandwidth, and storage capacity. However, the core principle is ensuring that the recovery process can meet the defined RTO and RPO within the context of the organization's risk appetite and regulatory obligations. The selection of backup media, the frequency of backups, and the retention periods are all driven by these factors, aiming to minimize the impact of a disruption and facilitate a swift return to normal operations. Question 23. When transitioning to ISO 22301-2019, a newly appointed business continuity manager at Etha Solutions, a financial services firm, is reviewing the documented outcomes of the Business Impact Analysis (BIA). The BIA identified that the client onboarding process, if disrupted for more than 96 hours, would result in severe reputational damage and potential noncompliance with the Financial Services Modernization Act, FSMA, which mandates timely client service. The analysis also determined that to maintain client trust and meet regulatory expectations, the onboarding process must be operationally functional within 48 hours of a disruption. What is the most accurate representation of these documented BIA findings concerning the client onboarding process? Option A. The recovery time objective RTO is 96 hours, and the maximum tolerable period of disruption, MTPD, is 48 hours. Option B. The recovery point objective RPO is 96 hours, and the recovery time objective RTO is 48 hours. Option C. Maximum tolerable period of disruption MTPD is 48 hours and the recovery time objective RTO is 96 hours. Option D. Maximum tolerable period of disruption MTPD is 96 hours and the recovery time objective RTO is 48 hours. The correct answer is D. Maximum tolerable period of disruption MTPD is 96 hours and the recovery time objective RTO is 48 hours. Explanation: the Business Impact Analysis (BIA) is a foundational activity within ISO 22301-2019. Its purpose is to identify and evaluate the potential consequences of disruptions on business activities. Key outputs of the BIA include determining the maximum tolerable period of disruption, MTPD, and the recovery time objective RTO for critical activities. The MTPD represents the absolute longest period an activity can be unavailable without causing unacceptable consequences, while the RTO is the target time within which an activity must be restored after a disruption. Documenting these findings is crucial for subsequent stages, particularly the development of business continuity strategies and plans. The documentation should clearly link the identified impacts, e.g., financial, reputational, operational, legal/regulatory, to specific business activities and specify the timeframes derived from the analysis. For instance, if a disruption to the payroll processing activity would lead to significant employee dissatisfaction and potential legal penalties after 72 hours, and the organization deems this unacceptable, the MTPD would be documented as 72 hours. If the organization determines it needs to resume payroll processing within 24 hours to mitigate these impacts, the RTO would be documented as 24 hours. This precise documentation ensures that the subsequent development of recovery solutions is aligned with the business's tolerance for disruption and its recovery priorities, thereby supporting the overall effectiveness of the business continuity management system. The documentation must also reflect the consideration of legal and regulatory requirements, such as data protection laws or industry-specific operational mandates, which can significantly influence the MTPD and RTO. Question 24. Considering the transition from ISO 22301-2012 to ISO 22301-2019, Which of the following principles most accurately guides an organization in determining the necessary extent of documented information for its business continuity management system, BCMS? Option A. The organization's determination of what is required for the effectiveness of its BCMS, considering its specific context and risks. Option B. The historical precedent of documentation practices within the organization, regardless of current effectiveness. Option C. The volume of documentation maintained by industry peers with similar operational scales. Option D. Strict adherence to all documented information requirements explicitly listed in the previous version of the standard. The correct answer is A. The organization's determination of what is required for the effectiveness of its BCMS, considering its specific context and risks. Explanation. The transition from ISO 22301-2012 to ISO 22301-2019 introduced several key changes, particularly concerning documentation. Clause 7.5.1 of ISO 22301-2019, which deals with the organization's documented information, emphasizes a more flexible approach compared to the previous version. It allows for greater discretion in determining the extent of documented information needed for the effectiveness of the Business Continuity Management System, BCMS. The standard specifies that documented information required by the standard, and that which the organization determines as necessary for the effectiveness of the BCMS, shall be maintained and retained. This means that while certain documented information is mandated by the standard, e.g., BC policy, objectives, scope, the organization has the autonomy to decide what additional documentation is essential for its specific BCMS context, risk appetite, and operational complexity. The focus shifts from prescriptive requirements for specific documents, like procedures or records, to a performance-based approach where the effectiveness of the BCMS is the primary driver for documentation decisions. This allows organizations to leverage digital formats and integrate documentation within existing systems, rather than maintaining separate, formal documents solely for compliance. Therefore, the most critical factor in determining the extent of documentation during a transition is the organization's assessment of what is necessary for the effective operation and continuous improvement of its BCMS, considering its unique risks and capabilities. Question 25. When transitioning to ISO 22301-2019, an organization is refining its business continuity risk assessment process. They are evaluating a potential cyber attack scenario that could disrupt their primary data processing facility. The analysis team has determined that such an event has a moderate probability of occurring within the next 5 years based on recent industry threat intelligence and internal vulnerability assessments. The potential impact is assessed as severe, potentially leading to significant financial losses, reputational damage, and regulatory noncompliance under data protection laws like GDPR. Which of the following best describes the organization's approach to analyzing this risk according to the principles of ISO 22301-2019, particularly concerning the interplay between likelihood and impact? Option A. Focus exclusively on the financial impact, as this is the most critical metric for business continuity planning. Option B. Primarily rely on qualitative descriptions of impact, without considering the frequency or probability of the event. Option C. Quantify the likelihood using a precise statistical formula and assign a definitive numerical impact score based solely on operational downtime. Option D. Systematically evaluate the probability of the cyber attack occurring and the severity of its consequences to prioritize mitigation and response strategies. The correct answer is D. Systematically evaluate the probability of the cyber attack occurring and the severity of its consequences to prioritize mitigation and response strategies. Explanation. The transition from ISO 22301-2012 to ISO 22301-2019 involves several key changes, particularly in how risks are analyzed. ISO 22301-2019 emphasizes a more integrated approach to risk assessment within the overall management system. Clause 6.1.2. Risk assessment requires an organization to determine the risks and opportunities that need to be addressed to give assurance that the Business Continuity Management System, BCMS, can achieve its intended outcomes. This includes understanding the likelihood and impact of disruption. When analyzing the likelihood of a risk event occurring, organizations should consider historical data, industry trends, and expert judgment. Impact analysis, conversely, focuses on the consequences of a disruption across various organizational functions and stakeholders, including financial, reputational, operational, and legal aspects. The standard does not prescribe a specific numerical method for calculating risk scores, but requires a systematic process to inform the selection of appropriate business continuity strategies and controls. The primary goal is to ensure that the BCMS is effective in managing potential disruptions, aligning with the organization's risk appetite and objectives. Question 26. An international logistics company, Global Haulage, is undergoing its transition to ISO 22301-2019. They operate in a sector heavily influenced by cross-border trade regulations, customs procedures, and international transportation laws. Recent amendments to several national transportation acts have introduced stricter requirements for cargo tracking, driver hour limitation, and environmental impact reporting, all of which directly affect their operational continuity during a disruption. Considering Clause 4 of ISO 22301-2019, which of the following actions best reflects the organization's obligation to understand its context in relation to these dynamic external factors? Option A. Conduct a one-time analysis of the most significant regulatory changes and document them in a general compliance report for management review. Option B. Focus solely on internal operational issues and assume that external regulatory changes will be addressed by legal counsel as they arise during an incident. Option C. Update the BCMS documentation to include a general statement about adhering to all applicable laws without detailing specific regulatory impacts on business continuity capabilities. Option D. Systematically review and integrate all new and revised national and international transportation laws and customs regulations into the BCMS scope and risk assessment processes. The correct answer is D. Systematically review and integrate all new and revised national and international transportation laws and customs regulations into the BCMS scope and risk assessment processes. Explanation. The transition to ISO 22301-2019 from earlier versions, or the initial implementation, necessitates a thorough understanding of the organization's context as defined in Clause 4. This clause requires identifying internal and external issues relevant to the organization's purpose and its business continuity management system, BCMS. It also mandates understanding the needs and expectations of interested parties and determining the scope of the BCMS. When considering the impact of evolving regulatory landscapes, such as changes in data privacy laws like GDPR or industry-specific compliance mandates, an organization must proactively integrate these external factors into its BCMS. For instance, a financial institution operating across multiple jurisdictions must account for differing regulatory requirements regarding data breach notification timelines and reporting mechanisms. Failure to adequately identify and address these evolving legal and regulatory issues within the context of Clause 4 can lead to non-compliance, increased operational risk during disruptive events, and a BCMS that is not fit for purpose. Therefore, the ongoing monitoring and review of the external environment, particularly legal and regulatory changes, is a fundamental aspect of establishing and maintaining an effective BCMS under ISO 22301-2019. Question 27. When transitioning an organization's business continuity management system to ISO 22301-2019, what specific aspect of the incident response structure is most significantly re-emphasized to ensure a more integrated and proactive crisis management capability, particularly in relation to established organizational governance and risk management frameworks? Option A. The development of comprehensive training programs for all employees on basic incident reporting procedures and awareness of business continuity plans. Option B. The integration of the incident response structure with the organization's overall governance and risk management framework to ensure alignment with strategic objectives and compliance requirements. Option C. The detailed documentation of all past incident response activities for post-incident review and knowledge capture. Option D. The establishment of clear communication protocols between the incident response team and external regulatory bodies during a prolonged cyber attack? The correct answer is D. The establishment of clear communication protocols between the incident response team and external regulatory bodies during a prolonged cyber attack. Explanation: the transition from ISO 22301, 2012 to ISO 22301, 2019 involved several key updates, particularly concerning the incident response structure. The 2019 version places a stronger emphasis on the integration of the Business Continuity Management System, BCMS, with the organization's overall governance and risk management framework. Clause 8.4.3. Incident response structure in ISO 22301, 2019 requires an organization to establish, implement, and maintain a structure for incident response. This structure should define roles, responsibilities, and authorities for managing disruptive incidents, including the escalation process. The standard emphasizes that this structure should be capable of responding effectively to incidents that could impact the organization's ability to deliver its products or services at an acceptable level. The transition guidance highlights that the updated clause aims to ensure a more proactive and integrated approach to incident management, aligning it with strategic objectives and regulatory compliance. This includes ensuring that the incident response structure is documented, communicated, and tested. The transition also reinforces the need for clear lines of communication and coordination among different response teams and stakeholders, ensuring that the organization can maintain critical functions during a crisis. The updated standard encourages a review of existing incident response plans and structures to ensure alignment with the new requirements, focusing on the effectiveness and efficiency of the response mechanisms. Question 28. Consider an organization that has recently transitioned its Business Continuity Management System, BCMS, to align with ISO 22301, 2019. The top management has finalized the business continuity policy, which includes commitments to support BCMS requirements and continual improvement. To ensure the policy's effectiveness and compliance with the standard's communication mandates, what is the most critical aspect of its dissemination and implementation? Option A. Providing the policy to key stakeholders upon request and ensuring it is available in the company's public-facing corporate social responsibility report. Option B. Including the policy statement in the employee onboarding materials and annual compliance training modules. Option C. Publishing the policy on the company intranet and requiring all employees to acknowledge receipt through an automated system. Option D. Ensuring the policy is communicated to all personnel and relevant interested parties, and that its content is understood and applied by them. The correct answer is D. Ensuring the policy is communicated to all personnel and relevant interested parties, and that its content is understood and applied by them. Explanation: the core of effective communication of the business continuity policy under ISO 22301, 2019 lies in ensuring it is understood by all relevant parties, both internal and external, who are affected by or can influence the organization's business continuity performance. Clause 5.2. Leadership of ISO 22301, 2019 mandates that top management shall establish, implement, and maintain a business continuity policy that is appropriate to the organization's purpose and context. Crucially, this policy must include a commitment to support the relevant requirements of the BCMS and a commitment to continual improvement of the BCMS. Furthermore, the standard requires that the policy be communicated within the organization, understood, and applied. This communication is not a one-time event but an ongoing process. The policy needs to be accessible and comprehensible to all personnel. For external parties, such as suppliers, partners, or regulators, the communication strategy should be tailored to their specific roles and responsibilities concerning the organization's business continuity. The policy's effectiveness is directly tied to its dissemination and comprehension. Therefore, the most comprehensive approach involves ensuring the policy is not only communicated, but also demonstrably understood by all personnel and relevant interested parties, reflecting the principle that a policy is only as good as its implementation, which is driven by understanding. This aligns with the overall intent of integrating business continuity into the organization's culture and operations. Question 29. Consider an organization that has transitioned its Business Continuity Management System, BCMS, to ISO 22301, 2019. During an internal audit, it's discovered that the organization's documented procedures for incident response do not adequately address the coordination requirements with a newly enacted regional data privacy regulation, which mandates specific notification timelines and data handling protocols during a breach. What is the most appropriate corrective action to address this nonconformity, ensuring alignment with the principles of ISO 22301, 2019, and the identified regulatory obligation? Option A. Revise the incident response procedures to incorporate the specific data handling and notification timelines mandated by the new data privacy regulation, and subsequently train relevant personnel on these updated procedures. Option B. Issue a memo to all staff reminding them of the importance of data privacy and the need to comply with all applicable regulations without altering existing documented procedures. Option C. Schedule a future review of the incident response plan in 2 years, coinciding with the next scheduled major BCMS review cycle, to assess its alignment with evolving regulatory landscapes. Option D. Document the nonconformity in the internal audit report and rely on the general principles of data protection, without explicitly integrating the specific requirements of the new regulation into the BCMS documentation. Correct answer is A. Revise the incident response procedures to incorporate the specific data handling and notification timelines mandated by the new data privacy regulation, and subsequently train relevant personnel on these updated procedures. Explanation: the transition to ISO 22301, 2019 requires organizations to reevaluate their existing business continuity management system, BCMS, against the updated requirements. When a nonconformity is identified during an internal audit, the standard mandates a process for corrective action. This process begins with understanding the root cause of the nonconformity. For instance, if an internal audit reveals that the business impact analysis, BIA, has not been updated to reflect changes in critical business functions introduced by new regulatory compliance mandates, the nonconformity is the outdated BIA. The root cause might be a lack of clear procedure for integrating regulatory changes into the BCMS documentation or insufficient training for personnel responsible for BIA updates. The corrective action plan must address this root cause to prevent recurrence. Simply updating the BIA without addressing the procedural or training gap would be a superficial fix. Therefore, the corrective action should involve revising the procedure for BIA updates to include a trigger for review based on significant regulatory changes and implementing targeted training for the relevant team members. The effectiveness of the corrective action is then verified, typically through follow-up audits or reviews, to ensure the nonconformity does not reappear. This systematic approach, focusing on root cause analysis and verification of effectiveness, is crucial for maintaining the integrity and compliance of the BCMS under ISO 22301, 2019. Question 30. Considering the transition to ISO 22301, 2019, which strategic approach for developing an internal audit program would most effectively validate the BCMS conformity and operational effectiveness, particularly in light of revised requirements for management commitment and the integration of updated risk assessment methodologies? Option A. Focus the internal audit program solely on the documentation and evidence of the transition project plan, ensuring all transition tasks were completed on schedule and within budget. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive audit of all BCMS components with equal emphasis, irrespective of specific changes introduced by the 2019 revision, to ensure a holistic review of the existing system. Option C. Prioritize audit activities on areas directly affected by the revised clauses of ISO 22301, 2019, such as updated risk assessment processes and demonstrated top management engagement in BCMS oversight, while ensuring the program's scope and frequency are responsive to process significance and prior audit findings. Option D. Delegate the internal audit program development to external consultants who specialize in ISO 22301, 2019, allowing them to determine the audit scope and frequency based on their general experience. Correct answer is C. Prioritize audit activities on areas directly affected by the revised clauses of ISO 22301, 2019, such as updated risk assessment processes and demonstrated top management engagement in BCMS oversight, while ensuring the program's scope and frequency are responsive to process significance and prior audit findings. Explanation: the internal audit program for a business continuity management system, BCMS, transitioning to ISO 22301-2019 must consider the changes introduced by the new standard. Specifically, Clause 9.2, internal audit, requires that the organization conduct internal audits at planned intervals to provide information on whether the BCMS conforms to the organization's own requirements for its BCMS and to the requirements of ISO 22301-2019. It also mandates that the audits provide information on whether the BCMS is effectively implemented and maintained. When transitioning, the audit program needs to verify the integration of new or revised clauses, such as those related to top management commitment, risk assessment methodology updates, and the enhanced focus on the performance evaluation of the BCMS. The scope and frequency of internal audits should be determined based on the significance of business processes, changes affecting the organization, and the results of previous audits. Therefore, an audit program that prioritizes areas impacted by the transition, such as revised impact analysis and risk assessment procedures, and the updated requirements for top management involvement in the BCMS review, will be most effective in ensuring a compliant and robust transition. This approach ensures that the audit not only checks for adherence to the standard, but also assesses the effectiveness of the BCMS in its current state, considering the specific changes made during the transition.